You got it. And then you'll be able to see the chat box.
Yeah, it's recording now. Great. Okay. Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's just about 2 o'clock, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar. My name is Carrie Mahoney. I'm from the ARC of Massachusetts, and we are pleased to have Lisa Drennan from Merge join us today for Inclusion is Not Canceled. And we're going to be talking about some strategies, coping strategies for a time of isolation and uncertainty. So welcome. Today's presentation will be about 50 minutes. We will be having some interactive time. And so hopefully you're all familiar with the chat box and you can answer questions and do some brainstorming. And we're hoping to make this more interactive rather than you just listening. So after the 50 minutes, we'll also open it up to questions. So this webinar is being sponsored by both the ARC of Massachusetts and Widening the Circle Pathways to Friendships. So Lisa Drennan is the founder of Merge, a diverse abilities inclusion, and she has an impressive 35-year-old history supporting people with intellectual disabilities in their communities. And actually, Lisa, I will have you go into a little bit more depth about your background. So take it from there.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you everybody for joining me, and thank you for the introduction. I'd love to just share that for many of you on the webinar today, direct support professionals, I was going to say I've been in your shoes, but you know what? I've not been in your shoes in this current situation. So I just want to start by saying that, you know, perhaps you've had to put your own emotions on hold or aside right now and adjust to this new crisis. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who's on this call and taking the time to learn how we can be more inclusive in our practices and help support the men and women in the programs where you work. So let's jump right in and get started. We're going to start with some welcome and introductions and setting the stage. So with setting the stage, we're going to review who's on the call and then why are we on this call today? And then also how we're going to implement the top strategies that we're going to be going over today. We'll be going over the top 10 inclusion tips and then ending with an attitude of gratitude and positivity and some resources that I'll be sharing with you. So we'll get started right away. So as mentioned, I have a 35-year experience supporting individuals with developmental disabilities to reach their enrichment and wellness goals. So I started at New England Village at Pembroke, Mass as a direct support professional and worked up the ranks. A lot of my focus was on recreation, and I ended up helping to build and start and was the director of the Solar Wellness Center right on the campus of New England Village in Pembroke. So while there, my experience was really focused on how important and value that recreation and enrichment and wellness opportunities brought to the men and women that we were serving. And what I learned from that is I could see people's gifts coming out, right? So they would be able to participate in an activity, perhaps with a friend with a common interest. And that really struck me as so important and valuable in their lives. So with that, I moved on to be the first ever Association Director of Inclusion at the South Shore YMCA, and I created trainings and programming to help our Y community become more inclusive in their practices. And my big aha moment when I moved into that role was that previously, for almost 30 years, I had been working with and alongside other professionals who worked with this population, primarily adults with IDD. And now I'm in a situation where I'm working with camp staff, or a membership desk staff. I'm working with Zumba instructors, fitness instructors, all different types of staff who don't necessarily have a background in working with persons with, and I use the term diverse abilities, I'll explain that. So what happened in my eyes was this big aha moment where I realized how important it was that we work together, right? Those folks like you on the call who support and advocate for individuals with IDD, and then others from the community who perhaps don't have the experience to help them to be more inclusive in their practices and to create environments where people are welcomed, engaged, and supported. So from that role, I moved on to start Merge. It became very apparent to me that our entire community could use this type of help. So support, again, in tools and confidence to be able to welcome, engage, and support the people that you perhaps advocate for and support, and then others within our community. So that's my background, and that leads me here to today. So I'd like to take a moment that if you don't have your audio muted, if you could take a moment to mute it, just there's a little bit of a background sound, and I want to make sure everybody's able to hear me. So just take a moment and hit your mute button. It might be down on the bottom left-hand corner. Thank you so much. All right, so before we start, I use that term diverse abilities, and what does that mean? And to me, what that means, and again, keeping in mind, I'm working with staff and professionals typically who work with the general population. And what I say to them is I'd like you to be aware that people interact with the world around them. They learn and they experience the world around them differently. And people come from all different backgrounds and levels of how they interact and experience the world around them, which may include physical disability, learning, psychiatric disorders, neurological, could be autism spectrum disorder, hidden or invisible disabilities, and of course, intellectual developmental. So when we look at all these different ways or experiences that a person may have in their lives, then we are able to think about presenting information to a diverse population, right? So we use the term diverse abilities, and that's the term that I've brought up because what I do is I teach people to think about the entire group, and that we should teach in ways that everybody can be or teach or instruct or offer programming in a way that everybody can be included. So that's why I use the term diverse abilities. To me, it's more positive. It focuses on the ways that we present information as opposed to just focus on a particular disability. And the other part of my title, Merge Diverse Abilities Inclusion Consulting, is that word inclusion. And I'd just like to take a moment to explain what that means to me. And inclusion to me, it's not a program, it's not a staff member, it's not an event or an activity. Inclusion is the intentional planning that we do as a community or an entity or an organization to make sure that we're ensuring the success of all. All right, so it's the intentional planning that we're doing. And inclusion to me means that we're taking our existing offerings. In the case, I work primarily with recreation, sport, or camp organizations, any community entity, and teaching them how to create a culture of inclusion rather than just a program, because it's really a way that we look at all the different ways that we include everybody in what we offer. So that's what inclusion means to me. So let's get started on our presentation today. Setting the stage. Who is on this call? And perhaps you were on this call as a direct support professional. There may be some self-advocates on the call, a parent, family members, friends, or community members. This webinar is made for everyone, okay? And even though I've been invited to speak to you as a direct support professional, you may also be in one of those other roles, right? You could be a family member, a self-advocate, a friend, a community member. And so you may also be in that role. And then one step further, taking that, you could also be a person who's benefiting from these strategies, okay? And then finally, who else is on this call? Really, anybody can be on this webinar, because inclusion means all, now more than ever. Inclusion truly is our entire communities working together to make sure all feel welcomed and belong and supported. Setting the stage. So why are we on this webinar? What got you to jump on? The title, whatnot, attracted you to be here today? And what I want to share is why I think inclusion strategies are good for all. And that's what I teach with all the organizations that I work with, that we use our strategies because everybody benefits from them, not just persons with diverse abilities, but everyone. And we're on here today to address loneliness and fear and anxiety, depression and isolation that are occurring in really huge ways right now that we want to be addressing. The strategies will be applicable now and in the future. So what we're learning here today and discussing will be something that will carry with you when the situation is over. And then finally, how? How are we going to use this information shared today, top 10 tips, and make it applicable in your jobs? And hopefully it's a wonderful resource for you to leave here today with. So I want to caution you or ask you to please think about looking through those different lenses that I spoke about to embrace these strategies. Some of them may make sense in your current role, and you might be thinking, oh yeah, that's really good. I'm going to be thinking about that and how I apply it to my role here at work, perhaps. Some of them you may also be thinking about, how can I help someone else to be embracing this strategy? So we keep that in mind. Or it could just be a benefit for another person, again, that we want to be sharing and thinking about. So we want to look at all these strategies through the different lenses. One thing we want to be doing, and this is a main focus of what we're here today about, we want to replace that word social with physical. Everybody's been saying physical distancing, and we want to be thinking about, or they've been saying social distancing, sorry, but we want to be thinking about physical distancing. All right, it's okay, and we need to, and the recommendations that we keep a physical distance, but we really need to be thinking about how we get social back, and that's what today's about. So hashtag keep the social. And we understand that we all have a responsibility to all members of our community, right? And so, and one thing particularly for the audience, for you here today, to be thinking about how you share what we learned today with others, but then also when this is over, or whenever you have a chance to interact with the general community, you're in an awesomely powerful role to be able to teach others as well. So we hopefully you take this with you and think about it in your role, because you are constantly teachers to the greater community as well. All right, now let's get down to business here. Coping strategies for all during a time of isolation and uncertainty. So here are my top 10 tips. We're going to go through each one of them. But before we start, any suggestions that I'm sharing with you today, I want you to be thinking about, number one, that safety is the number one priority, okay? So if a particular suggestion doesn't work for you or somebody that you're supporting, that's okay. We take the CDC recommendations or any other recommendations are paramount and come before anything that I'm suggesting here. So let's keep that in mind. All right, we'll start right off on a good note, and we're going to get in the right mindset. So mindset shift during a pandemic. I'm going to go over a couple of these here, but you can read them at your leisure. But to make the point, our mindset could, or maybe somebody we know could have a mindset that says, I'm stuck at home. And instead, let's try to shift that or help somebody else. I get to be safe at home, spend time with my family or those I live with. Maybe on the last one that we're looking at here, there's too much uncertainty right now. That could be a mindset that somebody's thinking about. And while I can't control the situation around me, I can control my actions. We're going to talk about things we can and cannot control in just a short minute, so keep that in mind. But before we do, I wanted to spend a minute and talking about grieving, because this situation has created, terrible loss for some people, right? They may be things that you're missing or grieving. So I'd like to, this is where we're going to get the ball rolling and ask for you guys to help chime in and be part of the conversation. I'd like to think about or to have you think about. And if you are now or supporting somebody who's on the call as well, help them to think about their answers and help them to put that in the chat box as well. So what are you missing right now? And what may you be grieving right now? And there's a lot of examples here on the board, but I want to hear from you. So go ahead and get into that chat box and type down and share with us, what are you missing and what may you be grieving? And I'll take a moment, you know, to say what I'm missing. I do miss my regular workouts. I would go to the Y almost every day and work out, and I have groups that I meet, and I miss that, right? So that's something I'm missing. And I'm certainly missing extended family that I'm not able to see. So that's something that I'm missing. And I think before we, you know, start here today, I'd love to hear from you guys, because you know what? It's okay to grieve, and maybe we can just give ourselves permission to do that. And I'd love to hear, what do we have in the chat box? Any responses there? Anything that's coming up so far? Carrie, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry about that. We've got actually lots of chats going on, which is great. You know, Anthony was saying the gym and his friends. I said my routine and my schedule. Chelsea is missing going to bookstores, and Judy Ann is missing her fiance. I saw something else that somebody was missing. Yeah, Michelle. I miss my mom. Melissa misses her family. Christy, group gatherings. Gianna, my sister's wedding and all the events around it. And Judy Ann, being able to hug my own grown children, not at home. Jacqueline, a lady I support, really misses going to Cumbies for her coffee. Michelle, I miss my friends from my day program and staff. Lori, visiting my friends and family. And Michael said going out to dinner. And then one last one from Maddie, she misses her 90-year-old grandma.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just a lot of loss right now, or missing or grieving, things that we want to get back at doing. So thank you for sharing that with me. And I think it's good. We've kind of got that off our chest, and now we're going to move forward. But do encourage others to share a little bit about what they're grieving and missing as well. Okay, and our final slide on this, number one, our coping strategy, getting in the right mindset, is to think about the things that we can control and helping those that we support to really start to focus on what we can control. So on the outside, on the blue circle there, we see some of the things that let's read those over and say, yeah, I cannot control this, so I'm going to let them go. So if you cannot control it or change the outcome of it, then we can just let it go. You know, predicting what will happen, other people's decisions or their actions and reactions. If other people follow social distancing or physical distancing, we use that term now. But let's focus on what we can control. Okay, so we can control how much news you read or social media that you're involved in. You can control your positive attitude, how you look after yourself, following CDC directions, so on and so forth. So if we can focus on what we can control, and we can also help others to focus on that, just nice gentle reminders of rephrasing things, that could be something that could help us all get in a better mindset, healthier mindset. Great. So now we're going to step into our next coping strategy, number two, facilitate social connectedness. And this is probably, of everything that we're going over today, the most critical of what you may be looking for help with. So I'm going to use this opportunity to go through an exercise, and I'm hoping that we can share ideas together so we can help others to learn how we can facilitate social connectedness, help others to get and stay connected. All right, so let's get started. Again, we practice physical, not social distancing. So our focus needs to be on how can we create social connections with others within our community. I want to take a minute to speak a lot about loneliness, because this is something I know that when I do these webinars for general audiences, I make this point, I want to share with you just as a reminder so I want to share a quote with you. An interesting thing about loneliness, doesn't matter how many people around you, what matters how you feel about the quality of the relationship, the valued, reciprocal, and the gifts that are shared. So when people experience loneliness, there's a decrease in immunity, increase of stress hormones, perhaps sleep difficulties. Just overall, the effects of our well-being are really at play here. And as we know, people, or we may know, but here's a nice reminder, people with disabilities, they're at an increased risk for experiencing this, for experiencing loneliness and isolation. And, mostly in this situation, it's going to be worse, but it can even be something that they experience not in this situation of really feeling lonely or isolated. And mainly one of the main reasons, and I like to point this out to others when they're that are not within our profession, from the outside community, that persons with disabilities, their social networks include, number one, the staff, right? Many of you on the call today, the staff who work with them, a paid position, other people with disabilities, and their own family members. That's a majority of who their interactions with. So having those, when you think about your connections outside of your family, your friends and the meaningful relationships that you may have, that could be missing for a person to have. So we want to really be aware of how important the impact of loneliness can be. And particularly during these times, because everything, is shut down, and our traditional norms of trying to get out and get active and engaged in the community are not available to us. So we're going to do some brainstorming on how we can make the social connectedness still occur. So let's be part of the solution, and how we're going to do that. We're going to go through an exploration exercise to discover and use a person's gifts. Okay. After that, we're going to brainstorm on how to get connected, right? So we're going to take those gifts and do a little brainstorm session on that. So exploring someone's gifts, in another word, it could be passions or discovering their interests. So we'll keep that in mind. Number one, think about someone who may need your help in making social connections. So it could be somebody you support. It could be a family member, a neighbor, or a coworker. Who do you know that could use help in making social connections? All right, so you got that person in mind. I have a person in mind. We're going to go on to the next step. What is lovely about this person? How do they light up people? What are their gifts? So this is where we're exploring gifts, right? And what people, what is the gifts that they have to share with others? But hold on a minute. This is a great idea. I just want you to pause for a second and think about your gifts. Because often when we're helping to explore somebody else's gifts, it might be a good technique to stop for a second and think about your gifts. What do you bring to the world? Just so you're in the mindset of understanding, oh, perhaps I really like to do this, or I'm good at this. I'm a gardener, or I'm in a play and I love being a thespian, or I'm an athlete, or what is it, your gifts? I enjoy helping people. All right, so with that being said, let's get back to what we were doing. So maybe you're thinking about your own gifts just to help trigger some ideas here. Let's go back to the person we're thinking of supporting. What is lovely about this person, and how do they light up people? What are their gifts? So I want you to take a moment and write those gifts, write about that person in the chat box. And while your responses are starting to come up in the chat box, I'm going to share about a person that I'm thinking of. And this person loves music, loves listening to music, singing along to music, and even learning new songs to practice to sing to somebody else. So that's a person that I'm thinking about, just a really joyful person who really communicates through music. So that's mine. I would love to have you guys share with me perhaps the person you're thinking about, what are their gifts? And if those answers can start coming to the chat box, we're going to start sharing those together. So take a moment.
Anthony wrote in just a great sense of humor and creative.
Excellent. Excellent. Great. Great sense of humor and creative. Anyone else have somebody that they're thinking of? Perhaps somebody you support or that you're working with today that you want to be helping to make a connection in our community.
And Chelsea remarked, a writer, a learner, an avid theme park goer, a movie expert.
Excellent.
Lori talks about she loves to sing and she's very joyful. Debbie said empathetic. Susan said loves to engage in conversation with people. Marianne talks about loves music and theater.
Wonderful. Music and theater. Those are great responses, and what wonderful gifts. These are people I'd like to meet. So wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I want you to keep that in mind. Now, whether you share it in the chat box or you're just thinking yourself, still, we're going to go through this process together. So we're going to go on to the next slide.
We got a few more.
Oh,
Can I
sure.
just share those?
Yeah, sure. Please.
Yeah.
Do.
So Heather was saying that this young man loves musical instruments and he loves to decorate his home. Lorraine talks about she loves to sing, dance, laugh, is loving. And Judy Ann loves ice skating, new adventures. And Maddie talks about loves watching TV, comedy movies, shopping, and music.
Wonderful.
So thank you.
Great. Those are great examples. Again, really exciting. We've got a lot of people who love music and the arts and different, all different types of gifts that we were sharing. So let's move on to our next step here. Sharing these gifts to build membership and belonging within our community. So now here's the tricky part. Think about that person, what gifts they bring to the table. Who in your community needs these gifts? Okay, let's think about somebody else in our community who may need their gifts. So that's the first part. And then the second part is, how will these two be connected in their common interest or their gifts? All right, so I'm going to give an example just to help you, think this through. And with all the wonderful examples that you gave me before about the lovely gifts or what makes somebody lovely, start thinking about how to connect them with somebody in your community. So with my person who loves music and enjoys singing, learning new songs, I'm thinking about somebody in the community. Perhaps it's someone who is a neighbor or someone who's elderly who really could use companionship and maybe lives in an assisted living. Can we connect with them? Maybe online or somehow get connected with someone, and that perhaps I could help this person to learn an oldie song, something that the person on the other end would appreciate and understand and love and connect with. So if they're connected through music, then we can figure out how to. Right now it's going to be either online, or perhaps if they're a real close neighbor, it could be outside their door on the deck, a separate porch that they could be singing to them together. So that's my example of how I'm going to help the person I'm thinking of get connected with somebody in the community. This is the tricky part. Now I want you guys to give some thought. What were the gifts that you had given as examples? Add into the chat box who might need these gifts, and how can you connect these people with these gifts to somebody in the community? How are we going to make that connection? How's it going to happen right now? So think about that. And I welcome you to start sharing that in the chat box. And I have a wonderful, I just thought the person with the interest in the amusement park, I believe it was, I have a great idea on that. So if you don't come up with something, I have an idea to share there. But there were a lot of very similar types of gifts. We can think about who else in the community might benefit from them and how we can help to make that connection. So if anybody has any examples, just go ahead and add them in that chat box. And Carrie, whenever you're ready, I'd love to hear them.
Okay. Well, I'm just adding a little bit about how technology is making this easier during these times with the Zoom and, FaceTiming. I mean, you can really, you can see the person, you can hear the person,
Right.
just can't touch them. But that's
Right.
okay because we're not supposed to be.
So that could
Yeah,
be part
yeah.
of that could be part of the suggestion or the solution for how to connect somebody is by using this wonderful tool that we really didn't have 5 or 10 years ago. So that's a great point. Thank you for pointing that out. What else do we have?
Chelsea has something, connecting with Imagineering in a box-free online Disney course to create theme parks and share ideas on social media with people of similar interests. What a
Boom.
great idea.
Perfect. Perfect. That was just that's a perfect example of how we could help connect, right? So do you see that the connection is based on a mutual interest? It's helping somebody to express their gifts, making that connection. And right now we have to use Zoom or other online platforms, and that's okay. But what I love about that is just it's based on a common interest and that perhaps a connection is made there. So what else do we have for examples?
Heather chatted in that her individual belongs to a ukulele workshop prior to the pandemic, so he could reach out to one of his members to jam on Zoom or FaceTime.
There you go. Share it with others, right? Invite other people to be part of that. Fantastic example of how to help make those connections or reconnect with somebody from previously that they may be missing or feeling some loneliness about, missing that part of their lives. Any other suggestions?
Yep. Anthony chatted in, attending a virtual museum online with FaceTime and a friend.
Love it. Love it. Especially if there's some kind of common interest there and a museum that you both have this interest in. You have that virtual tour and then maybe even take it one step further. And when this is all over, we're going to visit in person, right? So these are the building blocks, and we'll get to that. How about one or two more other examples that might be shared?
Yes. Susan chatted in that connecting with people at her church versus Zoom and Skype, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So keeping that connection, if somebody was missing, church was part of their lives, how can you help reach out to somebody, make that connection? And perhaps there's, they could, practice some hymns together or whatever it is that they would feel a great connection about their church or the community, create a volunteer opportunity together. So fantastic. And how about one more?
Jacqueline chatted in that the individual she's thinking of loves the color, and she has sent some of her pictures to her friends by mail. And Lori also chatted in about they've been writing cards and notes to peers.
Right, good. So connecting with peers out there in the community, and I love it, peers that they know and friends that they have, and maybe there's somebody new that they don't know that they could help make a connection. Maybe there was someone that they chatted with once about a certain movie that they liked, and they could start a conversation there, right? So continue on that communication with people we know and connect with. It's fantastic, helps with that social connectedness, but even thinking about someone else in the community as well, someone new that could really appreciate those gifts, who would love the cards, the artwork being created, who might be really interested in that. So those are just fantastic. Great. So I'm going to just wrap up this by saying the benefits of this connectedness that we're making now will last beyond this crisis by helping this person to be a valued part of the community. So we are building blocks right now and helping to continue with making those connections, but these are just the blocks that are going to be in place for when things do open up again, to maybe perhaps help strengthen the connections with others within the community. All right, so keep that in mind and just keep thinking of other ways that we can help folks to create a connection with someone else in the community based on a mutual interest. Okay. All right, so I want to wrap up this segment by giving credit and some wonderful inspiration to Jania Stevens, Good Things in Life. I had watched a webinar that she did around the time I was making this webinar, and was just so inspired by this practice, and I would like to extend my gratitude and inspiration to her. All right. Number 5, I think we're on number 3 here. Flexible and creative thinking. Think outside the box. This is the way we've always done it. The 8 worst world words that I think anybody can really anchor to. It doesn't allow for flexibility or optimal success. And I am guessing you are experiencing that a lot now in your group homes. So we really have to be thinking creatively and flexibly about how we're approaching everything, which I'm sure, knowing direct support professionals like I do and having been in that role, you're masters at this, right? Always you need to go with the flow, or you need to be thinking outside the box. So just a little reminder to keep up that type of thinking. And right now, this is an opportunity to explore interest and not fall back on assumptions. You know, perhaps there was an assumption that, oh, well, this person that I support always likes this type of music or this type of movie. And maybe it's a time to explore something different, that because there is a little bit more time on our hand. Perhaps we could be spending time trying out new cooking, right? There's a little bit more time for involvement there, looking up recipes, trying a different type of cuisine that perhaps we haven't tried before. So it's a great time to explore other interests during this time where we have a lot of time on our hands. So I want to take a moment now. Let's get creative and share ideas on how we can be positive and build community during this crisis. And I know that many of you are already doing fantastic things. I'm going to share a couple here on the board. How do we keep positive and help with connectedness and social connectedness outside of our living areas right now? So leave positive notes in a common area where you live. Reaching out to family members, interview somebody, ask them about their memories. So just here's a bunch of examples. I love this one, and it'd be a great time to kind of have a movie night and pick a topic. Maybe watch movies or read books or listen to audiobooks to learn about disability culture. I have a resource page that I'm sharing at the end, and I have my top, I think, 4 or 5 picks of movies that if you haven't seen already or you want to re-see, that would be great. And try a new recipe online, post it. Try a new recipe and then post about it online, right? To start getting that connection. Oh, I like this recipe, it worked well. Here's some other suggestions, but I want you guys to start typing in that chat box. What other ideas do you have on what you've been doing, or what could you share with others on the call on how we can be creative and positive during this time? Maybe building a story together, right? Perhaps it's done in chalk or somehow done online, where one sentence is made and somebody adds to it, another person adds to it, and see what kind of story you can come up with. Right, and then some other examples here. Delivery people, I know that they're out there working hard all the time. They're bringing us what we need because we can't get to the stores all the time. So maybe a nice card that could help make a connection, help somebody to write one as well. And some others. So what ideas do you guys have? What have you been doing or thinking about? What could you share with the group here? What do you got, Carrie?
Chelsea's shared that she's doing a happy birthday drive for her 95-year-old Nana with the Westport Community Fire and Police Department. That's awesome.
Oh my goodness. Chelsea, connect with me after. My cousin lives there. She'd love to be part of that. What a wonderful, and happy birthday, Nana. I think that's wonderful. 95-year-old Nana. So please do, I think it was Chelsea, please reach out, because I'd love that information, and tell my cousin that they'll jump right on it. But what a wonderful thing. What else do we have there? Any other suggestions?
Lorraine shared that they're doing theme days, and they're having lots of fun role playing.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I love that idea. Theme days. Great. What else do we got?
I know I was on a webinar on Tuesday, and we're having different parents share a little bit how about they're getting through the days. And for her son, who's having, just a difficult time missing his school and his the people who help support him and that sort of thing. She has a photo album on his iPad, and they look at pictures together and kind of just, share warm memories and happy times, and that they're still going to be there for them. So I thought that was a really great and creative way of looking at that too.
That's wonderful. And if we can help, the people that we support to think about ways that they connect with family that way, what a wonderful gift. That's fantastic. Anything else that came in the chat box?
Jacqueline talks about delivering flowers to those that are safe at home and taking care of others.
Yeah, fantastic. Delivering flowers, planting flowers now, maybe planting some and giving to someone else so that it can continue to grow. If we are in this for a little bit longer, we will see the growth in it. Those are great ideas. I love it. Fantastic. So I'm going to move on, but certainly if you had any other ideas, throw it in the chat box and we'll bring it back up. All right, our next step, general communication tips. So again, this is one of my inclusion strategies that I share with the groups, organizations that I'm working with out in the community, but it doesn't hurt to, give a reminder out there for our direct support professionals and maybe for yourself, but also remember, you are the teacher. So you are out there in the community when we are out in public. So using these types of strategies are what you're going to be showing the rest of the world are helpful. So when giving any kind of directions or communication, few words as possible, using a calm demeanor, low voice, you want to watch your body language and allow for processing time. That's just one example. And right now we brought it up a couple times. We're all communicating very differently and we're using different modes. So, start to understand and use and figure out and help others how to use Zoom, how to go back to old-fashioned writing a letter and how wonderful that'll be. It's great practice on communication skills for those we support. And then language matters, hashtag I use a lot. And again, you are the example. Language that we choose to use and using person first language, for example, but then also being mindful about confidentiality and demonstrating that no matter where we go. So that's our number 4 tip. Number 5, develop together a visual schedule. And this is really important and no matter what your setting, so if it's direct support professionals or back at home or whatever your settings are, having a schedule, what's expected of the day, and it can be extremely helpful for everybody, particularly in these new situations. So it's written words, it's icons, or it's photos. You want to keep it age appropriate. They're lined up in the order of sequence. And what we want to be doing with a schedule is crossing off when things are done or taking it off, depending on how you set it up. And it just helps someone to kind of stay focused for the day and gives purpose and helps them to feel more in control in this situation. Being able to see the sequence of events helps someone to feel more comfortable and control their day. So they know what's coming and what's expected. And it's also a great tool to process change. So for instance, 2 o'clock, we're supposed to have an outdoor porch time or, a little walk around the yard or whatnot, and it's raining out. If somebody was looking forward to that, the way that we would help them to process that change is to, take that off the schedule and have them help replace it with something else that's going to happen in its place. All right. And then in general, just maintain consistency with the schedule as much as possible. This structure is going to help offer safety and predictability for yourself, family members, others that you support in your role here. And this is, again, one of my other tools that I teach at the trainings that I do with community organizations. And it's setting clear expectations. So these are the rules that are created and reviewed with the group at the start of each day. So figure out how that might work with your groups or your setting. It's just, allowing us a time to be consistent on what are the expectations. So when we do review them, you allow for processing time and then have somebody repeat back so we know their understanding. I have an example here, and I'm just going to recognize that this is more for a family, but it's just an example on if they are now homeschooling, for instance, which a lot of us are, perhaps these are some of the expectations. So we want to keep in mind they're always going to be framed in the positive. You generally want to have about 5. All right, 4 or 6, somewhere around there. And you can use written words, icons, photos, if that's more appropriate. And again, we want to keep the particular expectations broad enough, right? So we might say, hands and feet to yourself, if that is something that would be appropriate for the group that you're working with. Just an expectation that's pretty general like that. And then knowing what is expected in this new normal, this is going to help someone process this change and manage the situation safely. We can also use an expectation chart if we happen to be doing something different or out of the norm. So for example, if your group home, if you're able to go to a local park and go for a walk, you might want to go over the expectations prior to starting that. Things like, you know, before maybe you could go up and pat a dog, but maybe we want to hold off on that, and that we do hello or hi, you know, wave, high five, wave, instead of going up if they saw somebody to hug. We would want to make sure that we're reiterating the six foot distance, because in a new setting that could be an issue. We just want to go over those expectations ahead of time. And then number 7, so this is some self-care tips for you and for others. Again, so first we got to think about yourself, and knowing direct support professionals like I do in these very trying times where just giving, and probably tired and exhausted. And I recognize what a difficult job it is that you're all doing. And that's why it's so much more important that we're taking care of ourselves. We're putting on that oxygen mask, taking care of ourselves, and then perhaps sharing these tips with others as well, or incorporating it into your days. So number 1, go on an attention diet. So we are being bombarded by news all day long. And if that TV's on, or social media's on, the computer's on, or somehow the news it's pretty negative right now. Sometimes it feels like we're in a twilight zone. There's a lot of alert type of news coming our way, and that can be overbearing at times. So we want to stick to 2 to 3 times a day, and maybe pick just 2 to 3 reliable news sources and keep it at that. All right. If there is a emergency situation you need to be aware of, somebody will get in touch with you. Otherwise, let's just stick with the 2 to 3 times a day to really kind of decrease that amount of negative information coming our way. Practice gratitude daily. So here's a suggestion. Every morning when you get up, name 3 things you're grateful for. You can't repeat either, right? You can't say the same 3 things every day. Think of 3 new things every day that you're grateful for. And we're going to go through a little practice of that at the end. Exercise, all right? So whether it's in your home, outside of your home, around your yard, or however you're able to get exercise to bolster your physical and mental health. And then music. Music is such an important tool to really help us with, having a healthy kind of approach to our day. You can create soothing or nostalgic playlists, and really use music to help keep us calm. And with that self-care, that's an important suggestion. So again, these are 4 suggestions. We'll practice ourselves, but then also help others to practice that. Number 8, we want to think like a team. So you are not in this alone. Ask for help when you need it. I could imagine that sometimes you may feel like you're very alone and that this is very overwhelming, but there is help out there. And I would guarantee, if I were to speak, to your supervisor or other administration within your organization, they are there for you. So just don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. And from your teammates as well. If able to help out others, the respite would be appreciated. So in your situation, could it be, maybe you help give another staff a break or whatnot, or, in your lives, in your community where you live, maybe there's a family member, a neighbor, a friend who could use some help. Somebody shared on a previous webinar that they provided dog walking to a coworker who had an autoimmune disorder that they could not go outside, so they would go and walk their dog for them. So it's just a great example of how we can help, be part of a team, because we're all in this together. And there are wonderful resources out there coming out each day. Seek them out. They're out there. I'm going to share with you that this is my resources. These are my top favorite resources right now, ideas, suggestion, links that you can go in and check out yourself. You will be receiving a copy of this after the webinar. So check them out, provide me some feedback. What did you like? What would you add in there? And please feel free to share these with others as well. So those are my top ones there. Number 9, use positive language. So when we're in a position where we're giving directions or we're communicating instructions, any type of correction, we want to focus on what we'd like to see or occur rather than pointing out the bad. So for example, just very quick one would be walking feet or let's walk rather than saying stop running, right? Perhaps it's a direction about, cleaning up or preparing an area after a group or whatnot. So instead of saying, look at the mess, you've made such a mess here. You're not supposed to be using those equipment, those supplies. Instead say, oh, let's pick everything up so that we can get ready for the next activity. So you want to be given the directions in what you'd like to see rather than pointing out what they've done wrong, somebody has done wrong or bad. And then you're role modeling positive solving problem techniques. Pay attention also to our own self-talk, maybe saying things like, this is never going to end. If it's negative in nature, maybe we can consider how we might switch that dialogue. And then here's your homework. Focus on the positive. Use a higher ratio of praise to correction. So I want you to go through the rest of your day, and I'd like you to identify how many times that we give corrections or perhaps are framing it more in the negative versus how many times we're giving praise or focusing on the positive. So that's your homework for the rest of the day. See how you do, and then try to take mental note of how we can be using more positive language again to teach others what we would like to see as opposed to what's wrong or what we don't want to see. And then finally, get out. And I mean, get out and in nature, whenever possible. There's healing properties in nature. And exercise is going to help you boost your physical and mental health, even if it's just a short walk, sitting on the deck, or go around the yard, or go, in the neighborhood if you're able, or park if you're able. And have fun. Make up a scavenger hunt or take pictures and post them online. If, say perhaps on your off time, you are at a park and you take some photos, perhaps bring them back to the men and women that you support. And then you could share with them, hey, I went to this park, and when this is all over, I'd really like to take you there. I think you'd like it. There's a wonderful pond and some chairs to sit back and kick back and enjoy it. So, find a way to make that creative and fun. All right, those are my top 10 tips. And again, I hope they were helpful for you, but I would like to encourage you to take them and embrace them for yourself and also for others within your networks or the people that you support and serve. So now wrapping up, we have some time for attitude of gratitude and positivity. So during this forced isolation and the physical distancing, what have you recognized you were grateful for or appreciative of? So this is a time to write that in the chat box. So that little bit of an example of, what that I gave earlier. You want to pick 3 things a day, recite them in the morning. What are you grateful for? What are you appreciative of? So I'm going to share mine. I am super grateful that I receive in the mail on an automatic delivery every month, my hair color. So I'm good there, and I'm getting that every month, and I'm really happy about that, particularly in these times when we can't go to the hairdresser. So what are you grateful for? I'm also grateful, well, first of all, thank you to all of you, the direct support professionals who are out there and really putting yourself aside to be there and help support men and women with intellectual developmental disabilities. So that's my grateful. What are you grateful for? Write that in the chat box, and I can't wait to hear what you're putting in there.
So while you're chatting in, Jim suggested that if someone's feeling down during these times, encourage them to help others, and they'll most likely feel better themselves. Good point, Jim.
That's a great point. Anybody feeling grateful that they want to share?
So Anthony's saying, I'm grateful of my family and that I have a job that I enjoy.
Yes, yeah, that's a wonderful, grateful thing to be appreciative. So many people have lost their jobs, and that could be a real source of just feeling like you don't belong. So wonderful. What else?
And Lori shared that she's grateful for her good health.
Oh, wonderful. Grateful too,
Yep.
for you too. I hope we all continue with good health.
Yep. And Jacqueline shared that her children are home from college and we get to have dinner together
Yes,
every night.
that's
This
a
is such a
plus.
rarity with the work schedules these days.
Exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, good.
And Heather shared the young men I support, my mom, and my best friend.
Wonderful. See?
Chelsea
Yeah.
says she's grateful that she still has a job,
Mhm.
that her family's healthy, and that the internet is available to connect me to
Thank
support
you.
and friends.
Thank you. And what a wonderful, wonderful device we have at our fingertips here.
And Michael shared that he's grateful for his home and his family.
Mhm.
Rachel, I'm grateful that we're safe and that we have so many wonderful people and friends at work to talk to. And Gina, grateful for the meaningful career. Also, this forced time home has brought me to some time to work with on my own health and my home.
Wonderful.
And Christy, excuse me, she's grateful for her job and having time to reconnect with friends I've lost touch with because of when I'm just so busy all the time.
Absolutely.
And Melissa says she's grateful for living with people who love her and for all the, oops, sorry, I have to go back up. We're getting so many. Okay. And for all the people who love her and for all the support that CSI is giving her. And that knowing she is not alone and is alive and is healthy keeps her going each day. Lori, I'm grateful for an amazing team who we have daily contact with. And finally, Richard shared family, friends, and my staff.
Wonderful. Those are great. And, just hearing them all has kind of cheered me up a little bit, right? It just brings you a little bit of positivity. So make sure we are adding that in every day. And then we're going to wrap up here with lean in and learn from the shelter in place. What will be better when we come through the other side? And I think some of your gratitudes already spoke to this. I'm going to share one thing that I think is going to be better. For instance, I like to go to parks and go for runs or hikes or bike rides and whatnot. I'm seeing a lot more activity there, which I think is wonderful. Families there, couples who are out going for a walk, kids learning how to ride their bike or whatnot, and that they weren't necessarily there prior to this. So maybe there's more time for us to appreciate the natural beauty around us. So that's what I think is going to be something positive on the other side. So we have just a couple minutes here, and I welcome you to share in. What else do you think will be better when we're on the other side here? And, if we even think to take it one step further, how is this helping you to do your job, and how we can continue to help teach our community to be, more inclusive and welcoming of the folks that you support? So maybe there's something in that will be different after this is over, when we're back to our new normal, let's say. So what are you guys thinking can be better when we get through the other side of this?
I'm just going to share, this is Carrie, that I think I'm going to be far more appreciative of the simple things versus wanting, bigger or greater. Going to be looking at life, I think, a little bit different.
I think we're all feeling a little bit of that, and that this is a night. And a lot of people said more time with your family, things like that. Appreciate reaching out to friends that you've lost touch in, and that will have that sense of knowing what's really important. So just for certainly if a response comes in, but to wrap this up, we'd just be thinking about how can we, in our role, take the situation and what can we be creating together, those building blocks that are going to help with community and civic engagement. So ending there, unless do you have maybe one to share, Carrie, that came through?
Sure. Julianne is learning to give more time and attention. Okay. And Susan was saying that people will be more empathetic to others.
I hope so. I think so. I'm hoping that's what our world will be like, because it will, certainly make all that we're going through have a little bit more of a positive, that silver lining. so to speak. So I am happy to stay on the call for any questions that come out. I am a stickler for being on time because I know that everybody needs to get to somewhere else right now. I do believe we have just 2 minutes left. So I just want to give a quick plug here and an opportunity for you to connect with me. I'd love it if you guys go onto my website and join my monthly newsletter. You can get that right on my website. I offer trainings for community recreation sport camp organizations, and both online and on person training opportunities. But I also work with human service providers or agencies that support this population in teaching them how to access community recreation and how do we build community together. So please connect with me. LinkedIn, Facebook, join my email, Instagram, there's my number, and reach out to me. Let me know how it's going, and certainly share any additional ideas or questions that we weren't able to get to today. I wish we had more time for some questions with the whole group, but anybody who needs to leave, because it is time, 3 o'clock, I understand, but if anybody else has questions, I'm going to stay here and answer them for you. So feel free to throw in the chat box any questions you have, and in those of you who need to chime out because it's 3 o'clock, go ahead, and thank you for being part of this today. And thank you to the ARC of Massachusetts and the Widening the Circle program for offering this. Much gratitude.
Great. Chelsea just said that this is her, she thanks for sharing this on Facebook. It's her first webinar and she really enjoyed it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I'm so happy. Thanks for sharing that. And please connect with me. Definitely. I love that. Because I want to hear about Nana's birthday. Any other questions that came through?
Okay, I don't see any. People appreciated several comments about people appreciated today. Anthony likes your artwork, Lisa. And
talented
anyway,
friends.
so I just wanted
talented friends, not mine. Thank you.
Just wanted to remind everybody that you'll all be getting a copy of this a webinar, the slides, and as well as that resource page that Lisa has. So I think we're good.
Wonderful.
So, anyways,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks
thank
for
you all
spending the
for
afternoon
joining
with
us.
me.
And
Great.
thank you, Lisa, for a great presentation. Appreciate
Wonderful.
it.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. Take care and please stay in touch, everybody.
Okay.